Hi, y'all. Today I wanted to highlight a concept that I think is really important for people to understand and really constructive as we are beginning to understand in the world of healing and the spiritual community about epigenetics and how we store in our cells memories from our ancestors as far back as 14 generations. This can manifest in all kinds of ways, and I can recommend more books about this, but sometimes we carry illnesses that came from our ancestors, and sometimes we carry emotions that came from our ancestors that we will project upon our life experiences and assume that it came just from our own life, but really it's something that we've carried in our bloodline for a long time. So the concept that I wanted to highlight that was coined by the author Resmaa Menakem, who's a trauma worker, in this book, My Grandmother's Hands, he talks about the difference between clean pain and dirty pain. Now, clean pain is what happens when, let's say, you have conflict with someone and you're in the wrong and you feel guilty about it and you admit that guilt and you apologize. Along with that comes vulnerability, humility. It's not always the most comfortable to admit when we're wrong, but what it does is it leads us to opportunities to connect with people. It strengthens and fortifies our connections, which are paramount and fundamental to human life. We really do not sustain as people without connection with other people. The opposite is dirty pain. Dirty pain is when we avoid situations that we don't want to deal with, when we run away because we feel guilty. And what happens when we make this decision is it stays stuck in our bodies, and it ends up prolonging the issue and causes us to cyclically return to events in our lives that are going to spring up the guilt again and spring it up again because it wants to be dealt with and it wants to come out. But when we choose dirty pain, it's much less healthy for us. And importantly, it leads to disconnection. Now, what happens when, as a society living off of a history of racism and slavery, when the vast majority of what is commonplace and what is popularized in the world of healers is to not mention anything about racialized trauma? We don't have a very widely accepted framework for the fact that the vast majority of white folks in this country are carrying dirty pain, partly because these are epigenetic memories that we're storing in our bodies that we do not understand because they're no longer what we are living through, but in a way they are. Because guess what? I know the spiritualists will agree, time is a construct. And so the beauty of this is that we're given the opportunity to actually collapse time and work through that same exact trauma that long ago our ancestors chose not to deal with. And this is a framework, this book would be a really good resource for anyone who's interested in this. There's a lot of trauma workers who talk about racialized trauma and pain, who talk about the way that white folks are lacking in connection. I think this is exemplified in the fact that we have by far the highest suicide rates, and we are among the most isolated of all racial communities. But I find that there's a strong discrepancy as someone who is very spiritually minded with the fact that we typically run away from these conversations. And I just don't think that it is healthy for us any longer. I think it is really important that we continue getting the word out, that we have language for this, that it can be healed, it can be repaired, we can release this. And on the other side of feeling these really, really uncomfortable feelings is much greater opportunity for deep connection. And also our decision to deal with this trauma would mean that we would stop projecting it on people of color, which is what essentially we are doing for the most part in this society. And I will go on and share a lot more videos about different ways that this manifests, but I just wanted to get on and mention Resmaa Menakem and his brilliant work, and hopefully this is well received, because it's not my goal to shame white people ever, but to popularize the fact that we are hurting, and we need to understand that we are hurting because we carry racialized trauma in our bodies, and it is keeping us from being able to connect in more deep ways that we do not really understand, because it came from a long time ago, but we're still carrying it. So let's normalize that, and let's accept that about each other.